Hello, I just wanted to give you a quick report on cheap brake pads because we've had a pretty bad experience with it. So our brakes started to fade very rapidly. I hadn't changed them that long, and this is what we saw. Now we're riding a tandem, so I expect extra force, but I was pretty disgusted by what I found. And here we can see, in comparison with the new brake pad, that I had been literally adjusting them every few hundred meters, and I could not keep on top of the wear when it got towards the end. And this was literally only over a few hundred kilometers. Here we can see that there's less than 0.5 millimeter of pad left on this shoe, and that was about 300k max. The last 100k had been horrendous. And here is a new pad, and you can see it's got about 2¼ millimeters of friction material upon it. So why do we have brakes in the first place? Just to remind ourselves, we reliably want to get in control of our speed, and we want to be able to stop, and we want it to be reliable. The reliability helps us to build confidence in that we're prepared to go out and negotiate traffic, negotiate a hill, because we know that the brakes are going to perform properly, and we want them to perform easily in wet and dry conditions. And that's one of the reasons why many of us go for disc brakes, is because of their improved stopping power and their performance in the wet. And finally, we need to make sure that energy from the heat from the braking is dissipated well. So I want to compare 3 sets of pads that I bought. The first one on the left, those are the OEM pads, and they're £15 for a pair. Then we've got some quality, reasonable quality from Amazon. They're about £8 a pair, which is about half of the OEM ones. And then we've got the budget ones, which are £8, about £8.50 for a pack of 4 pairs. Better value, in theory. But let's have a look at the one that failed. We can see it was the ventilated part literally didn't last long at all, and bits and pieces were being thrown then behind the pad. Where against the plain metal, they wore away very rapidly, but it was particularly the ventilated component was ripped off, and we can see it against a complete pad that there is no comparison. So let's summarise what we found. As I say, the OEMs are about £15 a pair, and they performed excellently. They lasted a long time. Occasional adjustment was needed, but we did a lot of riding. They took us for miles and miles and miles, and the front became near the limit after about 2,000 kilometres. But really that was quite a good amount of riding, and I would have confidence to keep them going between 1,800 and 2,000 because they wear so well that I was able to keep on top of them, and it was just occasional adjustments, and then you get to feel at the end, and they faded very slowly. The mid-price ones, they stopped pretty well, but they did need a bit more regular adjustment, and the front and rear were both at their limit after about 2,000 miles, and so I would definitely not take them that far. The budget ones, they felt good when I first put them on, and we tried some pretty steep hills in the Lake District, but they failed after about 300k, really quite badly, and I would not trust these for more than one ride. In fact, the reason I'm not able to show you the replacements, the unused ones, is because I was so disgusted. I threw them straight away. I didn't want to risk putting them back in. They give me no confidence. So here's a side-by-side comparison, and you can see this is what you get after less than a week in the Dales. Just about 1 week they started to fade, and we hadn't done a great deal of cycling because we had friends to meet and other people to get alongside, so only about 300k of riding. It was absolutely appalling. So, are cheap brake pads worth it? I would say they did not reliably control my speed, and the word reliable is important. That means you can rely on it time and time again. I would never trust these after the first ride. Do they build confidence? Well, they terrified me, and literally towards the end of our ride when they failed, I was absolutely terrified because I had no spare brake shoes on me at the time. What were they like in the wet? Well, to be honest, after the first ride, they were not very good in the wet at all. You could feel they just slid and they made a horrendous noise. As far as dissipating energy from the friction, well, that's in theory what they were doing, but I am not going to trust them enough. I think that part of the reason was they got hot, and I think they just fell apart when they got hot. They were awful. So I said at the beginning, all comes down to value. Do I think that these pads represent good value for money? And really, I would say I value my life and my wife's life. We're on a tandem. I value them more than any price of any pads. So from now on, I am only going to be buying OEM pads, and I'm going to rely on those. So you can agree or disagree, but that's where I stand. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye bye.